How's your heart today? Some distances are hard to explain because nobody actually disappeared. The person is still alive. Their name still lights up on your phone sometimes. You still know where they live, what kind of coffee they drink, and maybe even how their laugh sounds when they're really tired. And yet something that once felt close now feels separated by a quiet kind of weather. Tonight is for those people, the ones who are still here, but no longer reachable in the way they used to be. Maybe these letters will help put gentler words around that feeling. I never told you that your messages started sounding farther away long before the miles between us changed. You still send me the weather. That is the detail I keep returning to. Not because weather is profound, but because it is exactly the kind of thing you would send when you didn't know how else to begin. Rain tomorrow. Take a jacket. Hot this weekend. Don't skip water. Traffic bad near your office. Leave early if you can. When I was younger, I used to roll my eyes at those messages. I thought they were your way of talking instead of actually talking. I wanted deeper questions. I wanted you to ask how I was in a way that made room for a real answer. Now I think you were asking, just in your own language. You are my father, which means I learned your care before I learned your softness. You checked locks. You filled gas tanks. You tightened loose screws before anyone else noticed they were loose. You woke up early on road trip mornings and stood near the door with everyone's bags arranged in the order they'd need to go into the trunk. Love, from you, was always prepared, organized, quiet, slightly disguised as common sense. For a long time, I thought that meant we were not close. We have never been the kind of parent and child who sit across from each other and speak beautifully. We have had entire phone calls made of practical questions. Are you eating enough? Is the train still crowded? Did you pay that bill? Are you carrying cash? If someone overheard us, they might think we had a perfectly functional relationship and nothing more. But I used to hang up with an ache I didn't know how to name. I didn't want fewer practical questions. I wanted just one sentence that sounded like feeling instead of maintenance. Then life got older. I moved away. You retired. Mom started saying you were sleeping in the chair too often after lunch. Your knees started deciding the weather before the forecast did. And little by little, I noticed something I had missed when I was younger. Your practical language had always been carrying emotional meaning inside it. It was just a meaning I hadn't learned to translate yet. A few months ago, I went home for a weekend. You were in the kitchen cutting fruit the way you always do, too carefully, as if every apple slice needed to prove itself useful. We talked the way we usually talk. You asked whether my manager still sent emails at night. I asked whether the neighbor had finally fixed his gate. You told me the water bill had gone up. I told you city rent was ridiculous. We were speaking fluently, and still not saying much at all. Then, while placing the fruit on the table, you said, almost casually, "You sound tired lately." That was it. 4 words more intimate than any speech you've ever tried to give me. I looked up so fast I nearly laughed, because I had not told you I was tired. Not really. I had said work was busy. I had said things were fine. I had sent short replies, skipped a few calls, and made myself sound brisk enough to be left alone. But somehow, through all that, you heard something true. And the strangest part was that I still didn't know how to answer honestly. I said, "Just a lot going on." You nodded in that small way you do when you know the answer is incomplete but you're choosing not to corner it. Then you said, "Get more sleep before it becomes your whole personality." I laughed, because if tenderness enters our family at all, it usually arrives wearing a joke. Later that night, I stood in my old bedroom folding a shirt I'd left there months ago and realized the distance between us had never been made entirely of silence. Some of it was made of timing. Some of it was made of pride. Some of it was made of my own insistence that love had to sound a certain way before I would recognize it as enough. What I never told you is that I don't think you became farther away because you loved me less. I think I grew up without the right dictionary for your kind of love, and by the time I found one, adulthood had already made us both more careful. I never said that some of my safest memories have your name inside them, even though most of them contain very few words. The toolbox by the front door when something broke. The message about rain arriving just before I forgot my umbrella. The groceries quietly appearing in my trunk when I visited and pretended I didn't need anything taken care of. I never said that now. When you text me the weather, I read the full sentence underneath it. Stay well, stay steady. Stay here a little longer. Some people are far away not because they vanished, but because we learned their language too late. Sometimes love doesn't sound distant. Sometimes it only sounds unfamiliar until the years teach us how to hear it. The next letter is for someone who still replies, still cares, and still somehow feels like a closed room. I never told you that the hardest part was not losing you. It was losing the version of you who used to live inside my ordinary day. You and I are still friends. At least, that is the answer I give when people ask about you, and it isn't a lie. We still message on birthdays. We still react warmly to each other's photos. If something truly serious happened, I believe you would show up for me in the way decent people do when history still matters. But history and daily closeness are not the same thing, and I didn't understand how much I would grieve that difference until it was already normal. There was a time when you knew everything too small for anyone else. Not the major events, the tiny ones, the strange coworker comment, the burnt toast morning, the train delay that made me irrationally angry, the terrible date I needed to laugh about before it became embarrassing, the outfit I almost bought and didn't, the kind of day where nothing was technically wrong, but everything felt slightly off, and I needed someone who knew my atmosphere without requiring a full weather report. That used to be you. We met at work, back when adulthood still felt like a costume both of us were wearing with visible discomfort. We became close the quiet way people often do, shared coffee breaks, a few funny messages, a lunch that lasted longer than planned. Then the strange comfort of realizing there was now one person in the building who made the whole place feel less anonymous. After that, your name entered my life with the ease of routine. I stopped thinking of contacting you as a decision. I think that's why the distance hurt so strangely. Nothing exploded. Nothing even broke cleanly. Life just kept filling up the spaces where our friendship used to happen automatically. You moved farther away. I changed jobs. You fell in love with someone good for you. I started spending more weekends helping my family with things that never ended on time. We still cared. We were simply no longer woven into each other's days. The moment I understood it was heartbreakingly small. Someone at work put a sign on the office fridge that said, "Please respect community yogurt," which was exactly the sort of ridiculous thing I would once have sent you before I even sat down at my desk. I took a photo. Then I stopped. Not because I didn't want to tell you. Because, for 1 second, I realized I no longer knew whether I still had the right to be that immediate. That hesitation felt bigger than it should have. I sent the photo anyway, and you replied with something funny and perfect 2 hours later. But those 2 hours said more than the joke did, not because delayed replies are failures. Because our old closeness had lived in the assumption of instant access. We had once belonged to each other's middles, not just the polished updates. A few weeks later, I found one of your old voice notes while clearing out storage. You were walking somewhere windy, complaining about a bad sandwich, then forgetting your own point because you saw a dog in a sweater. I listened to it twice in my kitchen with groceries, still sweating on the counter. And what got me was not nostalgia for a younger version of us. It was the ease. The confidence of your voice when you still assumed I belonged in the next thought you had. I typed, "I miss when I knew the middle of your day." Then I deleted it. Not because it wasn't true. Because it was too true. And because there are some griefs adulthood makes us feel almost embarrassed to name. We're still friends, after all. You're still alive. So what exactly am I mourning? Not the person. The access. What I never told you is that you taught me how meaningful it is to be casually known. You knew my rhythms so well that I felt less alone in my own life. You lowered the emotional cost of being myself. And even now, when something absurd happens and my hand still thinks of your name for half a second, I don't take that as a sign I'm stuck. I take it as proof that our friendship once lived somewhere very real. I never said that one of the loneliest things about adulthood is realizing how many people you still love warmly from a distance that nobody intended to create. I never said that sometimes I don't miss you dramatically at all. I miss you in tiny flashes, a pharmacy receipt, a stupid sign, a song you would have mocked affectionately, the soft urge to tell someone who used to understand before I explained. Some people stay alive in our contacts long after they stop living inside our days. And maybe that's why the heart gets confused. It sees no ending, so it keeps trying to find the door back to a room that simply isn't open the same way anymore. The last letter is for someone who is neither gone nor near, and whose distance taught me that love can survive while closeness does not. I never told you that I started missing you while we were still speaking politely to each other. That sentence still feels unfair. You did nothing cruel. We are not a cautionary story. Nobody cheated. Nobody shattered the house with one terrible sentence. If anything, what happened to us was so gentle that it took me too long to admit it was happening at all. We still spoke. We still sent each other practical messages. We still knew the names of each other's coworkers, family members, favorite snacks, and bad habits. We still sat across from each other at dinner sometimes and talked about errands, rent, and whether the bathroom shelf needed replacing. From the outside, we looked solid enough. That was part of the problem. Function can hide a lot of emotional distance if both people are tired enough. I think our closeness left in small pieces. It left in the way I started saving funny stories and then forgetting to tell you. It left in the way your bad day no longer automatically opened mine. It left in the carefulness of our questions. We still asked, how was work? But less often. What did it feel like? We still passed each other the salt, the charger, the shopping list, but fewer real thoughts made the crossing. One evening, we were eating noodles because both of us were too tired to cook anything that required hope. You were telling me about a meeting that should have been an email, and I was nodding in the right places, but inside I was having the startling realization that I felt lonely with you right there. Not abandoned, not unloved, just far from the version of us that used to arrive at the table with more of our inner lives still open. That was the moment I should have spoken. Not to accuse you, not to make us dramatic, just to say, I miss how unguarded we used to be. But I said nothing, because I think I was afraid of naming a distance that might become permanent the second I gave it words. Silence can feel safer when truth has consequences. For months after that, we continued in our decent, careful way. We still bought each other the right things from the store. We still remembered appointments. If one of us got home late, the other left a light on. There was tenderness in the structure, but less and less in the spontaneous center. Looking back, I don't think love disappeared first. I think emotional immediacy did. And without that, even kind love can start to feel like a hallway instead of a room. When we finally talked, neither of us was surprised enough. That's how I knew we had both been feeling the same weather for longer than we admitted. We sat on the couch and said patient, grown-up things through tears that embarrassed us both. I care about you. I don't think either of us meant for this. I still want good things for you. All true. All somehow terrible in their honesty. But what I never told you, not even then, was this. The part that broke me wasn't the ending. It was realizing how long I had been living beside someone I still loved, while already feeling the distance. I wish I had said, I don't need more spectacle. I need more truth. I wish I had said, practical care is beautiful, but I miss being emotionally reached. I wish I had said, please don't let us become so polite that we stop bringing our real lives to the same table. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything. Maybe timing had already done what timing does. But I still think there is value in naming the ache correctly, even if it arrives late, because late honesty can still teach us how to love better next time. What I carry now is gentler than regret. It is understanding. You can still love someone and feel far from them. You can still speak to them and miss them. You can still wish them well and know that the version of closeness you once had is no longer alive in the same way. Some people do not leave our lives, they leave our reach. And learning that difference may be one of adulthood's quietest heartbreaks. If someone came to mind tonight, maybe it's because distance is not always made of disappearance. Sometimes it is made of changed language, changed timing, changed access, and all the feelings we never translated before life moved forward. The people in these letters are still alive. There is no clean goodbye to explain it, only the slow understanding that love, history, and memory do not always guarantee closeness. If this stayed with you, let it stay gently. Some distances are not failures. Sometimes they are just the shape time takes when two lives keep going but no longer meet in the same place.